Hello masks and femmes, my name is Penny and welcome back to another episode of absolutely cooking the WNBA. Your girl has been playing way too much 2K and I think I see why Trump banned us from professional sports now, because I've been cooking with the Indiana Fever in my league save. I'm on my second year and I won MVP already. As you can tell by the thumbnail and title, I'm talking about being trans again. I know, I'm sorry. In the last video on this subject, I spoke about how me realizing I was transgender and what that was like. This video is more about after I realized, what it took and how it felt. Because, to be honest, my immediate reaction was, well, my life's over. I had this perfectly crafted narrative of my life built up, and that was something that was heavily relying on the idea of what a young man should be.
I don't think you can compare Hitler to people that are worried about climate change. The worry that I have here is...
Hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
In terms of who I was for my family and my friends and, discipline and all these different masculine ideas that you build up. So, and because of that, from realizing up until last year, it was essentially just months and months of trying to unpack internalized ideas that I had not only of myself, but men and women within society. This was for personal reasons, obviously, but also social reasons. I say social reasons because it does feel that sometimes in order to justify being trans to the outside world, I have to have a knowledge of my own psychology and biology way above the level of the average person. Most people, if you tell them something about yourself, they don't immediately want to know how your childhood was. You can see examples of this in my previous video where I talked about being trans, where in the comments I had people psychoanalyzing me, which to a certain extent I understand, because I think being transgender and, gender dysphoria as a whole is something that can't really be understood by someone who hasn't had it before. I don't think that there is an equivalent or an anecdote that I or any other trans person could give to make it sort of relatable or understandable. And I think because of this disconnect, arguments such as you are mentally ill or perverted are ones that are thrown out as surface level pejoratives, but having them thrown at you will require analysis and knowledge to legitimately argue back, and that knowledge is expected of you, which is a pressure that is only placed as a form of othering, also known as marginalization. When I was younger, I was never sure of myself. I think that's something that has come through pretty obviously on this channel, especially if you look at my older videos. I will say an opinion and then be like, I don't know, take it at your own risk, just in case you fuck someone's life up. But the only thing that solved that was when I started being myself. And that's scary, especially in the political climate that we have to exist in at the minute. But being yourself is something that will set you free. When I first spoke to my best friend about being gender fluid/trans, it was gender fluid at the time because I didn't think people would get the trans thing. I was still figuring it out. He said something that sort of fucked me up, which was, these aren't the exact words, but it was along the lines of the pendulum of your spirit sways left and right and all of that is you should listen to it. Which, what the fuck? Bro just whipped that out. We were in the middle of a walk in the woods and he just, bro's Plato apparently. But that did really help me, honoring both those sides of me, the masculine and feminine, which it turns out is mainly just feminine. With that in mind, just remember, oftentimes the transphobia that you will face is just a projection of them and not you. I just mentioned personal and social reasons, but those two things do kind of blend together. What I mean by this is being raised as a boy, there is a level of social programming that I was exposed to, whether it was the first time that I was told I couldn't cry or the first time I was told what I was doing was girly. Stuff like that is very ingrained, and again, the realization that I was of a different gender from what I was raised as was an inherently very turbulent time because you download all of this messaging, and it's not easy to unpack. It felt like there was a sort of raised as a weapon nature to being AMAP, also known as assigned male at birth. That only really became clear to me once I had a deeper understanding of self and a deeper connection with my femininity. And by raised by a weapon, yes, I'm literally correlating toxic masculinity to Rei Ayanami from Evangelion, who isn't a person and was molded to be a certain way, which is particularly violent. I'm aware of how that might sound, and I want to clarify, I have no problem with masculinity. I have friends in the military who I would call my genuine brothers that are very masculine. In greater society, I think we have a need for it, especially among fathers now, but that's a whole other discussion. I mean more that as a trans woman, I've been forced to confront these mindsets, which while very tough, has given me a sort of strength and confidence to be my true self, which is inherently human. It's inherently human to go up against something that's troubling you and then come through it and be a better version of yourself because of it. And that's beautiful. It's very human, but you know, some may consider me less human for it. Speaking on childhood within the transgender journey, a part of being trans that I do not see enough trans people talk about is the kind of mourning that you go through for how your life could have gone if things worked out correctly. I think the trans experience is sort of not glorified, but it's sensationalized, especially on trans Twitter where it's just constant jokes and beautiful transition timelines. And yes, while I think we should highlight trans joy and show how beautiful it is to finally be yourself, I think that undermines the much more serious parts, and by not talking about them and hiding them away, we are not giving power to people, we're just sort of undermining ourselves. Loss of childhood is a big one, and it's something that most of us face. Once I got over the sort of internalized misandry and misogyny, I was sort of left thinking about what I missed. You know, being a teenager, having those awkward makeup phases that every girl looks back on with a kind of nostalgic regret, like 2016 eyebrows. James Charles. What James Charles did to eyebrows, on the same level as Oppenheimer. But anyway, the friendships I might have made, while I get to experience this later on, like as a baby trans, which if you don't know what that means, it's a trans person who's very new in presenting their gender, you will 100% wear embarrassing outfits.
Leave me alone!
There's a difference when you're doing it in your mid-20s, 30s, 40s, sometimes 50s, than when you are 13. And while I'm on this subject, ladies, if you're listening to this, do me a favour, burn the thigh highs. Burn them, please. We are not a costume, we're real people. One final thing I want to touch on before I go is a part of the coming out process. Yes, you will have to deal with negative reactions, but if you have good people around you, you will also experience a level of joy that you probably didn't think was possible. One example I can give of this is how my interactions with women have changed over time in public. Presenting as a woman in public is particularly nerve-wracking, especially when my body isn't really there yet. So there is a slight obvious disconnect, but it comes with really nice moments, such as like the occasional smile or glance that I receive from other women, that feels very different from what I would receive as a man. It seems much safer, you know, a smile of recognition almost. The air of defense that most women have to have in public, unfortunately, isn't there, and it's a rare occasion where I feel genuinely connected to something, which is nice considering, you know, the constant disconnect of gender dysphoria. On the other hand, presenting male and the attitude and interactions I receive from men who view me as a fellow man that they can be safe to say things around of is genuinely one of the most torturous, teeth-pulling experiences. And every time, although I drop my voice to fit in and change my language to be more blokey because I want to fit in, I find it a little corner of hell. I recognise this video was particularly dark. In my next video I will touch on the more happier parts of it. I'm not far off getting HRT now, and while I don't pass, I pass more than I used to. It's easy to see the transition timelines and the trans women on Twitter like Cloud or Helmet Girl and be like, damn it, I'll never be that. First of all, you are you. That's the important part. You are already the woman you want to become. You just don't have the outside to match. And second of all, it's called a transition for a reason. It's a process. You can't learn it all in a week or a month. Femininity isn't a pair of leggings. It isn't, you know, a 10-pound bra, but it can start that way, and slowly over time you will bloom more and more through, you know, HRT, self-care, and most importantly, effort. I've been publicly out as trans for nearly a year. Okay, not a year, but like 6 months, but a year to some people. And you know, I've come far, but I'm still not all the way. Like, voice training sucks, which is why I still don't use a feminine voice in these videos, but I will eventually. It's a transition, it's a journey, it's not all gonna happen overnight. You're gonna take time to get the voice right, you're gonna take time to learn the makeup, learn what dresses suit you. Nothing wrong with being an ugly duckling for a little while. Take care of yourself, ladies, because you deserve it, and God knows no one else is gonna do it for you. I've been Penny. Pull over if you get tired, call me back, and bye.
Someone's sitting in a room by themselves and they figure themselves out and say, God, this is gonna fucking suck. Where's passion when you're 300 pounds? So how did this happen? I just fucking did.